Beneath the quiet majesty of the desert moon, where every grain of sand carries a whisper of forgotten royalty, he rode alone, the prince of falcons, his heart a restless flame seeking its mirror in the wind. The night carried no echo of his name, only the trembling hum of stars watching him surrender to silence. And there, between the folds of twilight, she appeared, not as a dream, but as the very reason dreams were born. Her eyes were not eyes. They were ancient kingdoms uncharted by mortal maps, oceans of light that could drown empires and still leave the soul thirsting for more. When she looked at him, time forgot to breathe. The desert forgot its loneliness, and even the wind paused mid-song, afraid to interrupt what the heavens had begun. Fazza, the lion-hearted, the poet crowned by silence and sun, felt the weight of surrender for the first time, not to war nor to fate, but to the quiet power of her gaze, a power older than thrones, softer than dawn, and stronger than destiny itself. She did not speak. Words would have been too small. For what her eyes carried, a kingdom not ruled by swords, but by longing, a throne not built from gold, but from the echo of hearts learning to beat in unison. He watched her move. Each step, a verse in the poem the universe had written long before time began. Her veil danced with the desert wind, tracing silver arcs that caught the light of forgotten stars. And in her silence, he heard the language of everything lost. Empires, promises, prayers, all reborn in the rhythm of her breath. He bowed, not out of custom, but out of awe. For what crown could stand higher than love? What empire could outlast a gaze? That unmade the loneliness of kings? She smiled. And that smile was sunrise spilling over 1,000 forgotten dunes. Her laughter, a breeze carrying the scent of jasmine and memory. In her presence, even the falcons circled lower, as if they too sought to taste the divine stillness. He spoke her name softly, as if it were a prayer. The syllables trembled on his tongue, like a secret not meant for this world. And she answered, not with sound, but with silence that wrapped around his heart. Like silk forged from moonlight, the desert watched. It had seen kings rise and fall, lovers turn to dust, but never this, a ruler surrendering his crown for the right to stand in her gaze. He thought of his kingdom, the towers, the gold, the banners that bore his name, and suddenly they seemed smaller than the distance between her eyes. He thought of his throne and realized it had always been a waiting place for this surrender. His voice broke like dawn. If love is the law of the stars, then I am guilty forever. She looked at him, and in that look, he saw every storm he had outridden, every poem he had buried in the sands, every heartbeat he had mistaken for silence. The falcons cried across the dunes, echoing the ache of something eternal, and the night, proud and infinite, bowed to the quiet majesty of their union. He took her hand, a touch lighter than time, softer than fate, and together they walked through the desert, as though every step rewrote history. Every footprint was a vow, every shadow a verse. The moon followed them, a silent witness to love too royal to be spoken aloud. And the stars whispered, "Here walks the poet who traded his throne for a single heartbeat of eternity." The dunes shimmered like molten gold beneath their steps. She turned toward him, and her gaze again claimed his soul. This time he did not resist. He let himself fall into her light. Like a falcon falling into the embrace of its sky, he saw within her eyes the reflection of his own fire, not the blaze that burns, but the one that becomes light. And he understood. Love was not surrender. It was coronation. Every poem he had written before her now felt like an unfinished sentence. Every word he had spoken was a prelude to the silence she gifted him. For what could a poet write When his heart was already written by her, he told her stories of his battles, of the desert storms he had tamed, of the nights he had bled ink onto parchment, trying to name the unnameable. She listened, her gaze a calm ocean, as if every wound he spoke of was a star reborn in her stillness. When he faltered, she reached out, and in that single touch, he felt the pulse of creation. The sands lifted in a silent dance, the air thick with invisible prayers. Even the night seemed to kneel before her. "You are not my conquest," he whispered. "You are my compass." Her smile, soft as sunrise, broke the last chain of his solitude, and the poet within him, long caged by duty, finally found his wings. He wrote her name across the sky. In lines of fire and dust, he carved her silence into eternity. And as the wind carried his verses over the sleeping dunes, the desert became a temple built of longing, crowned by stars, guarded by the ghosts of old kings who had never known love like this. Her gaze followed him, each glance a promise. "You are no longer lost." And he knew, for every road he had ever ridden, for every star he had ever chased, had always led to her. He stood before her, not as a ruler, but as a man who had found his reason to bow. Her presence was not his captivity, it was his freedom. Her silence was not emptiness, it was the music of truth. "What kingdom do I rule now?" he asked. She touched his heart and said, "The one that beats for me." And in that moment, the heavens opened. A cascade of light poured upon the dunes, turning every grain of sand into a jewel of surrender. He saw his reflection in her eyes, and it was not the prince, not the poet, but the man who had become her prayer.